Hello, welcome to the second video, the second bonus video for the Stitch People DMC Michaels class about how to cross stitch and how to do basic embroidery techniques. So this video is meant to be watched after watching the Michaels class on Michaels' YouTube video or michaels.com/classes and getting up to speed as to where we're at with our Sherlock Holmes pattern by Stitch People. And this is sort of the in-between homework that you've got between class 2 and class 3. So let's jump in. So to review, we've stitched the full door, we've stitched all the straight stitches, and what we're going to work on finishing right now is the Watson character to the right of the door. We've done his vest in the red color and his suit in the gray color, as well as his shirt collar in the white color. We're going to use DMC 945 for the skin tone and DMC 310 for the ribbon and eyes, as well as DMC 3712 for Watson's mouth. He's also got a mustache and some sideburns, for which I've listed to use DMC 612, but I sort of like the idea of making it even a little more blonde, so what I'm going to do is integrate just one stitch of DMC 729 with that. So here we go. Now, as I got ready to start stitching, I realized I miscounted in class 2 live for the Michaels class, which is silly. If you look, you can see that I've miscounted my rows here. So, as was the theme with class number 2, I've got some mistakes I need to resolve. I think the best way to get this aligned is to just rip out the stitches that I've done that sort of are the forehead and eyes. So I'm going to use a combination of working with my scissors, and I can see that this is going to be harder than I thought. So I'm just going to scrap that and use my needle to pull the stitching through, working kind of on the front side, on the back side, wherever I can get a foothold to get the point of my needle under those existing stitches and just sort of pull them out in the order that I put them in as much as possible. It's a little tedious, but it's pretty surefire, and you can just grab the loops of your cross stitches, pull them up, and pull out the lengths of the 3 strands of floss one by one. So it's worth doing to make sure that the counting of your pattern and of your finished portrait is all set. So just working bit by bit, pulling it out. We will then rethread our needle, because when you pull out stitches, your floss will get a little bit kinked from having been cross-stitched already. And we're just going to swap out our floss after we've got this all pulled out and start again. Oops. So just a reminder that you can use whatever tools you need to undo stitching if you've made a mistake. I'm using the tip of my needle. I'm using my embroidery scissors. If you had a seam ripper, you could use that as well. I'm using the tips of my fingers to pull out those threads and make it right. So now I'm just going to start cross-stitching Watson's skin tone just like normal, just like we did with the suit, with the door. Just going to cross-stitch it up. Follow the pattern as closely as we can. Now you'll see with this stitch, when I brought the skin tone colored floss through with my needle from back to front, it pulled up a little bit of black fuzz, black floss. So you can just flip your work over and use your needle to uncatch that floss. And I also see I have a little loop here on the back that I didn't notice when it was made, and it's a little too late to smooth it out. So I'm just going to hold it down with my finger while I continue stitching so that I can catch that loop on the back, make sure it lays flat and doesn't cause any problems. I'm just going to keep stitching as I go. Now, as we work our way up Watson's face, we'll leave the eye spaces blank, and we are approaching his forehead, which is designed a little funny because I design things in unique ways to make the shapes work for me. So if you take a look at the pattern, we went over this in class 2, but a quick review. We've got these skin tone color stitches and gray stitches that share a square, and you can either complete those as sort of horizontal straight stitches that lie parallel in the square, or as full cross stitches but that are half height, which is what I'm going to do, that second option. So I'm going to create stitches, cross stitches, almost full cross stitches, but instead of using all 4 holes of the 8 of fabric, I'm going to poke my needle through the fabric between the holes in the fabric so that I can have sort of squattier cross stitches in a half height, if you will, to represent that forehead. And then next, I'm going to just add the eyes, because that's an element that needs to come into play here. I'll fill those in, and then I will work on the hat. So just like I did with the forehead, I'm going to create half height squatty cross stitches along the top of those squares as indicated in the pattern. And I'm going to work my way up the hat, and the rest of the hat is full cross stitches. So that's easy peasy. So now I've got a little issue. Let me show you what happened. So my floss got a little bit separated. You'll see here on the end, I've only got 2 strands showing, and the third strand is sort of bunched down the way. All I need to do is pull that gently. If you ever see something that looks like this, it's just one of your 3 strands of floss sort of squished down. It's not really a knot. It looks like one, but don't freak out. Just smooth it out with your hands. And you'll notice the ends of my floss are a little bit frayed as well, just a little uneven. So I can just use my embroidery scissors and clip that off to give myself a nice sharp edge, make it really easy to thread my needle, smooth out my floss, and keep going. It's really easy to get nervous about what feel like mistakes like this, but sometimes they're pretty simple if you just kind of take it in and handle it slowly. So let's finish Watson's bowler hat. And once I finish off that gray floss, I can swap out my colors and fill in the ribbon of the bowler hat with black floss. Just cross stitches there. So now all that's left for John Watson is his mouth area. We've got the pink lips and the blondish mustache, which is listed on the pattern as DMC 612, but I'm going to add 1 thread of DMC 729 in there so that it's a little more multi-dimensional and a little more natural looking, like real hair or facial hair would be, just with many colors. So I combine those flosses and stitch his mustache, which I'm doing actually with straight stitches, just going the direction that the mustache would lay naturally on a person. Just a handful of straight stitches, give it a nice facial hair feel. And then I'm going to complete the lips in DMC 3712. And those are just 2 straight stitches for the bottom lips and a little half diagonal, basically quarter stitch for the diagonal part of the mouth. You just poke your hole right through the center of the square of the Aida fabric. Now I've threaded my needle with DMC 926 medium green gray for the window, and it's just 5 rows of cross stitching with a couple diagonals in the corners. Pretty straightforward, and that's going to give us the base to stitch the numbers on in our next class. So as you're stitching large areas of cross stitches, again, I just want to remind you it is totally up to personal preference as to whether you stitch in rows or stitch each individual cross stitch on its own. Doesn't matter, totally up to you. I just like rows because it feels like a little groove. And as far as the diagonals go, just stitch half a cross stitch in the direction that the pattern shows and you'll be good to go. So now we are going to talk about back stitching, which is a lot like straight stitching, but a little more systematized. So you bring your floss through from back to front and you create your first straight stitch, essentially, kind of going up through A, down through B. Then you come up through C, essentially, and then double back your needle back into B. And here I'm just going to make sure I have that tail inside the loop of my stitching so it's nice and secure as I put that down. But you'll see that a back stitch is sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a stitch. We move forward and then we went backwards. And now I'm coming back up, moving forward 1 step, and then I'm going to move forward in my fabric 1 step again and then work backwards. So this is what a back stitch is, as opposed to straight stitches, which are a little more randomized. They both create a straight stitch, essentially, a straight length of floss, but the back stitching is just a little more systematized of A to B, and then C to B, and then C to D, D to C, and on like that, as you can see in the video. And making sure that I'm putting the point of my needle through the whole of the Aida fabric and not through any threads of the Aida fabric or any threads of floss that already exist in the hole that I'm going into. So just keep an eye out for that and be as precise as you can. So I'm just going to finish up back stitching around this window, and when that is done, that'll take us to the end of our homework essentially for this week between classes 2 and 3 for Stitch People, DMC, and Michael's online class. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you were able to learn something new or review some skills. If you'd like to join us live for the 3rd class, it's going to be August 19th, 2021 at 3 p.m. Central. You can sign up by going to stitchpeople.com/week3. That's WEEK and the number 3. and sign up. You'll get the pattern, you'll get information for how to join us live, and we will continue this stitch along pattern and continue learning some techniques together. Thanks so much.